How
You
much,
get old like
how
me, you
good
gotta
they're
have
gonna
reading
do.
glasses. Doesn't work otherwise.
Can y'all hear me? I've been calling y'all's name.
Seriously? No.
Yeah, like through the. But I mean, everybody's talking. Hey, brother. Morning. What's happening? All right, we got about a minute and a half.
What's your what number's on that map?
Channel 1.
Your channel 1.
I'm channel 2.
All right. So we'd like to applaud all of you who made it here for 9 o'clock. I know that's few and far between in Whites Ferry Road land, but since we're live streaming this class, then this class will have a 9 o'clock hard start. Also good to know, it will also have a 9:45 hard end.
Yep.
And so that way we can keep our live stream family and everything like that involved and on time with what's going on in Worship Center. All right, we'll wait for the official start and then we'll go. Josh, we're on you whenever you are ready to. Wow. That's a technical term, by the way. That's right. That's
Yeah.
I need to know. Because there might be some readers. You or me?
You go ahead.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, guys. So happy to be here with you guys at Whites Ferry Road in West Monroe, Louisiana. You guys joined us online. We are so happy that you decided to join and to worship and to study with us. We're so glad you're part of our extended family, and we encourage you to dive in any way that you can, possibly.
Yeah, my name's Billy Loveland.
I'm
Tommy Perkins.
That's right.
And we're used to teaching kids, okay? So, every now and then, if I get a little carried away.
All right.
What's up, Nick?
Thank you, Nick. Can I go to the bathroom? That's right.
And how's your week been?
Man, my week has been really good. The daddy-daughter dance was here at Whites Ferry Road last night. One of my absolute favorite things that we do here.
You missed it.
Absolutely
It was very good.
loved it. So looking in a pretty good place.
Well, it's been okay. The weather's been kind of bad. I've been really kind of depressed about the weather. It's been cold and wet. The gas prices are through the roof. I mean, it cost me a bundle to fill up my car now. And, just all this stuff going on in the world and everything, it's just...
Well, that seems like a lot of griping.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Kind of reminds me of the Israelites. They were a grumbling bunch. And you know what they needed?
What did they needed?
They needed a leader.
Yeah, that is true.
They needed a leader.
They needed a leader. And time after time again, Israel was presented with a leader. Some of the greatest leaders that we read about in the Old Testament were the guys that were risen up by God to specifically lead this group of people.
And that's what our class is going to be about. It's about the leader who brought them into the promised land. His name was Joshua.
Right.
But we got to go back and get a little bit of history before we start getting into the book and the story of Joshua.
That's right. Now, our overall theme for this class, you can see it's on some of our screens, it's written down. It is that we're walking out God's plan no matter what. Right? Because God, the end all be of it all, and our takeaway, especially for this first class, is God has a plan. God has a plan, and you are involved in it. Now, sometimes in our lives, this is hard to see. Sometimes we don't see the plan.
Absolutely.
It doesn't say God has an easy plan. It doesn't say God has a plan that's just going to be happy and sunshine and rainbows and you're going to enjoy it.
And it's rarely ever our plan.
Correct.
You
Correct.
know,
And
we
that's
have
the
our
problem. Yeah, we
plan.
kind of stick
God
our plan
has
in
his
there,
plan for us.
and
Yeah.
it doesn't work. But God
That's right.
has a plan for our life, right? We've just got to walk the way that he wants us to walk. We're going to
That's
see
right.
that time and time again as we go through this entire book.
Yeah, and it's really funny because the more I've studied up on this and read, we're like the people of Israel.
Oh, a little bit, especially you, which is great when you complain.
You're right. So we were never quite happy or content with whatever we had.
Sure,
It was
sure.
like, we'll get into that.
Some of those times we really didn't even know what to do at the time.
That's right.
And then it goes back to our thing, and that's a lot of times, that's why we need a leader. We need somebody to show us the direction that we're being pushed, show us exactly what it is that we're looking at. Now, one of the things that we're getting into is Joshua is a tough book. Right? Like many of the books in the Old Testament, man, there is rough language. There's stuff that is dealt with in this book that we as modern Christians today often don't really agree with. It doesn't jive with us. The language of war, the language of destruction, the death and conquest and things that we see in this book sometimes doesn't seem to fit the narrative of our Christian lives today, of our forgiving and accepting and all that. But there is a reason and a purpose for this. We're going to see that God was at the forefront of this, and a lot of times this battle and conquest side isn't the way that we understand it today.
Right, and we got to remember how this history was brought about back then.
That's right. It was. It all came back down to, and props to Derek McQueen and Brian Rucker. Hey, there you go. Good morning, buddy. For teaching the class previous, leading up on the life of Abraham, because that's where all this began.
Yeah, and it was all done by word of mouth back then.
True.
None of it was written down.
And even the things that we're going to be talking about in the book of Joshua today were still long time written down after these events took place.
Right.
That comes into character as the way that the book is shaped and the way that it comes about, but it doesn't affect the theme and the overall message of what God is trying to instill in our lives through these historical books. Right. Historical books, by the way, as the Old Testament is broken up between the Pentateuch, the histories, the Psalms and poetic books, and the, who are those other guys?
Prophets?
Yeah, those would be the ones. Yeah. The prophets. They were all broken up. Joshua is the first book of the historical books.
Right.
And so it's got a lot of that good history-based stuff. We're going to get there, but let's jump back and go back to Abraham. Well, actually, you know what? First of all, I need a volunteer. Do you need a volunteer?
Yes, we do need a volunteer.
So we will randomly choose from our list of, hey, Freddie Franham, it's really good to see you this morning. I am so happy. If you will get him set up, we're going to go back.
This happens to be a good stick. You need to stand right here. And what I need you to do is just hold your arms up and just hold this. You're pretty strong, right?
No.
Come on, man. You've been working out. You're buff. Okay, now just hold it right there. Okay? That's it.
All right.
Easy.
Well, hey, let's say you take one step forward. Let's come off that wall a little bit. Don't want you getting lazy on me.
Okay.
You look good. Thank you, Freddie. For those of you playing the home game, Freddie's holding his stick up, and I like that.
I think they may can see him.
Oh, good, good.
Hopefully.
Good.
Okay.
Gives me power. All right, so the promise from God, the covenant with God to make Israel his sole people, as Derek so eloquently taught us over the last several weeks, came from the man Abraham. And Abraham had led the people. He had taken up the mantle and the covenant with God. They had led the people. Now they have found themselves in Egypt, where they spend the next 400 years. It started out pretty well. Famine drove them down to Egypt. They carried on with their family. Eventually came Isaac. Eventually came Jacob. And the Israelite people began to grow. They began to grow, they began to flourish, and then they found themselves in subjugation there in Egypt.
Right.
They became the slaves of Egypt, but their culture still grew there.
Right, and they had a promise that was given to Abraham that one day his people, are you okay?
I'm fine.
Okay. That all his ancestors would occupy the land of Canaan.
That's right. That's right. And they waited for this, and they waited for this. As they go, we're talking 400 years, we're talking a long time, man. And so you assimilate some of the culture that you're surrounded by. Maybe you impress some of your culture onto the people that you're surrounded. Hopefully. Yeah. But we're talking 400 years.
That's
years.
Nearly twice what our country is.
Sure, it is. More
it's pretty
than
amazing.
Twice.
We kind of lose track. There's a lot of years in all this book, and from the time they were in Egypt all the way through Joshua. There's a lot of time there. And 400 years is a lot of time to be subjected to forced labor.
That's right. So we'll hit our little fast forward button.
Okay.
And our Israelite people have just spent 400 years in Egypt.
And God has raised up a deliverer named Moses.
You okay?
There we go. You okay? You need some help?
I'll tell you what. Some of you strong guys from back in the back. Can I have two guys back there? Two guys? Here we go. We got a strong guy here. We got a strong guy here. Good. We're going to need you to help our buddy Freddie out. Now, you can't touch his stick, but you can give him a little brace.
There we go.
There we go.
All right.
There we go. You got him? Does that help?
Against the wall.
Nope. Oh, well, you know, we could bring you a chair, but we're just gonna, nah.
Well,
All right.
yeah, we had a rock he might sit on.
He can
that,
sit
but
on a
that's-
rock.
he's all right. Well, you know, God brought Moses up, and Moses was kind of an unlikely deliverer, but he ended up being, you know, one of the greatest prophets or deliverers or leaders that the Israelite nation had. But there's one verse I want to read to you. It's from Exodus 6:2. God said to Moses, oh no, did I lose it? Oh, there it is. I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty. But by my name, the Lord, I did not make myself fully known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, where they resided as foreigners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the Israelites, whom the Egyptians are enslaving, and I had remembered my covenant. Therefore, let's see, where was I? Therefore, say to the Israelites, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with mighty acts of judgment. I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. And I will bring you to the land I swore with uplifted hands to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give to you possession. As a possession, I am the Lord. Well, where's the one part I wanted to say?
Well, that's
Oh,
right.
no, here it is.
You
Here
got
it is. I skipped right over when my phone went down. But by my name, the Lord, I did not make myself fully known to them. I did say that. Okay.
Yeah, you did. So you're saying he did
Go
not
ahead.
make himself fully known.
He did not make himself
to
fully known
Abraham, Isaac,
Yeah,
and Jacob.
so I don't know what that means, but it tells me he didn't show his full power to Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. But he did to Moses
He did.
in the land of Egypt.
Right. And so remember when we talked at the very beginning, we said that God has a plan. Now, I'm sure none of the Israelites that Abraham shared this plan with thought that that plan involved 400 years of subjugation to the Egyptians. But it did.
Right.
So that part of it didn't really matter to God. So he says, I will rise up this new person that apparently is going to have more of God than anyone else that came before him.
So needless to say, Moses goes to Pharaoh, let my people go. Of course, Pharaoh said no. And, of course, that brought on 10 devastating plagues on the land of Egypt. And then, not only that, he takes the Israelites out and he parts the Red Sea for them. You would think
This was going to be the case. We may as well just have stayed in Egypt and just died over there.
months out there. Of course, they're grumbling. We don't have anything to eat. Let's go back to Egypt. Well, God sends manna. Are you okay?
All right.
Manna and quail. In Exodus 16, God sends manna and quail. Now, of course, the manna had some,
Sure.
you
It's
had
on
to-
the
you had-
ground after all.
It was on the ground. You
Shake
pick it up.
off.
And there were some rules about it. You could only take just enough for your family. You couldn't keep it overnight because then it would spoil. And you couldn't pick any up on the Sabbath day because there wouldn't be any there. And if you tried to keep any, it was pretty amazing.
That's right. So now we've brought into the wilderness here, which we're going to talk a little bit more about here in a minute. God is providing food for these people. He is leading them to the place where he had promised Abraham so many years ago. Now remember, in these 400 years, not only were they working and living in Egypt, but they were passing these stories down. So they weren't having to retell them. These people knew these stories. They had talked about them in their worship times. They had talked about them in their family times. They had talked about them around their meal times. But, after 400 years, really anybody was like, well, I don't know if I'll see it. I mean, nobody I've ever known has seen it.
But all the people that came out of Egypt, they saw his power.
They did.
Of course, then they're thirsty. Gets water from the rock. Hits the rock. Water comes out. Takes care of everybody. And then they run into their first little bit of opposition in the wilderness.
That's right.
At Rephidim, they get attacked by the Amalekites.
There you go. All right.
They were, little warrior faction there. And this is the first time we meet Joshua. He's the leader of the Israelite army. And he's out there battling the Amalekites. And as long as Moses is up on the hill with his staff raised, the Israelites are winning.
That's right.
But whenever his arms start going down, Joshua and the Israelites start losing. And so they battled all day, and the Israelites were victorious over. Okay, you can go ahead and sit down. So,
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Way to
Give
go.
him a big
Way to go.
hand.
Stretch it out.
So that's the first time we meet Joshua that we could find.
Right. And it was really important to see that while Moses was up on the hilltop raising his staff as the leader of the nation, Joshua was down on the battlefield leading the nation.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, did Joshua even know that was what was, doing it,
Who knows?
Moses up there,
Yeah.
Joshua's down there battling.
I would say...
I don't know if he looked up there and go, okay, he's got him up, let's go. I don't know.
I would say, I don't think so.
I don't think he knew.
Because we'll look at another verse a little bit later when we get into Numbers,
yeah.
where it actually says, hey, God tells Moses, be sure that you write this down.
Right.
And that Joshua knows this.
Yeah, well, that's actually right there in Exodus.
So as they're moving on, so we've got everybody poised and everybody ready. We've made our trek through the wilderness. We've had a little bit of grumbling. We've had a little bit of worship on the mountain. We've had a little bit of sacrificial cows and stuff. We've got some issues to work through in the wilderness, but we finally make it to the entrance to Canaan.
Right. We don't even know how many.
We're getting there.
Okay,
We're getting
okay.
there. All right. So, but Moses goes on and he picks out 12 men, right?
Okay.
And he sends the spies into the land of
Right.
Canaan, right? And the spies come back with
the riches of the land. And some good news and some bad news. But let's talk a little bit more about some of these people here. When God, before he sent Moses up to the Mount Sinai, he said, look, I'm going to be with you. And can I read this one?
Yeah, by all means.
That's pretty long. Exodus 23, where are we at? 20 through 33. I don't have a slide for it. See, I am sending an angel ahead of you to guard you along the way and to bring you to the place I have prepared. Pay attention to him and listen to what he says. Do not rebel against him. He will not forgive your rebellion, since my name is in him. If you listen carefully to what he says and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies and will oppose those who oppose you. My angel will go ahead of you and bring you into the land of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, and Jebusites, and I will wipe them out. I will wipe them out. Do not bow down before their gods or worship them or follow their practices. You must demolish them and break their sacred stones to pieces. Worship the Lord your God, and his blessing will be on your food and your water. I will take away sickness from among you. None of you will miscarry or be barren in your land, and I will give you a full lifespan. I will send my terror ahead of you.
That's right.
I don't know what that means. And throw into confusion every nation you encounter. I will make your enemies turn their backs and run. I will send the hornet ahead of you to drive the Hivites, Canaanites, and Hittites out of your way. But I will not drive them out in a single year, because the land will become desolate and the wild animals too numerous for you. Little by little I will drive them out before you until you have increased enough to take possession of the land. And he talks about its borders and everything. But he gave them this charge. I'm going to be with you. You're going to be fine. And then we've got all these times where everybody's like, oh, yeah. Whatever you say, we're going to do it, Lord. Moses would tell me, you need to do this. Oh, whatever you say, we're going to obey. And then, even after that, the 70 elders of the Israelites go up with Moses and see God. Usually if you see God, you die. They didn't die. So all this stuff they've seen all the power of God in Egypt, with the plagues, crossing the Red Sea,
the food in the desert,
the
plan that God has set out before them that says, I will make this work.
That's right. They've seen all this, and then it says, God says, Moses, go up to Mount Sinai with your aide Joshua. Go up there with Joshua, and I'm going to give you my law. So he's up there for 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, that's what, a month and a week?
A month and a week.
Okay. He's up there a month and a week, and what do the Israelites do? Oh, God.
There we go. Ruthie's got it.
What did they do, Ruthie?
Build me a golden calf.
They built a golden calf. We got to have something to worship. We're ready to worship. We're out here in the wilderness. We're having a big camp meeting out here. Let's worship. And so they make a golden calf. After all this stuff they've seen the Almighty do, And here they're down there worshiping. And then when Moses comes down the mountain, Joshua's like, Moses, I don't know what's going on down there. There's a war. I hear all this crazy hollering and whooping, and it's just a big Mardi Gras party down there.
Again,
Yeah.
lack of leadership.
Yeah, lack of leadership.
People just needed to be told what to do. The second they were put out on their own, everything went berserk. It's like when my wife goes out of town and leaves me with the kids.
Yeah.
she comes home and everything's a wreck, but
Yep.
everybody's alive.
Oh, there you go. But did anybody die?
Nobody died.
You know what's funny is, and you can go back to Abraham. He kind of bargained with God one time, didn't he? About Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, Moses bargained a lot with God. I'm like,
He did.
Lord, don't do it. You got us out of Egypt. It's going to look bad if you wipe all your people out now.
Sure.
Because, I mean,
Yep,
there was a
yep.
couple times where Moses had to come on, Lord, no, don't do it. No. Give him another chance. Okay, yeah, go ahead and go to the spies now.
All right, so Moses says, okay, well, we're here. We finally got here. We had a couple little bumps in the road, but we're here and we're ready to take possession of the land.
Okay.
So he chose someone from each of the 12 tribes, said, we're going to send you guys in as spies. Now, when he goes spies, it's not all cloak and dagger sneaking around the corner. I mean, they're actually going to go in and they're going to look around and they're going to kind of live amongst these people for a little bit, visit the markets, maybe take in a show, whatever's going on. But they spend a little time there and they come back with their report, and their report is this land is everything that God said it was.
That's right.
It is a land of plenty. It is a land that we can rise up as a nation in. But they have big armies. They have big swords.
Yeah.
They have better technology.
Yeah.
They hadn't been wandering around in the wilderness for a little while, and there's no way that we can take them.
That's right. And then we had two guys, Caleb and what was that other guy's name?
Joshua. That's right.
They came back and
Well
said, "Come
done.
on, we can do this." They were the the positive force in there.
That's right, that's right.
Come on, we can take these guys. It's kind of like when you're playing basketball or something. You got the little guy. It's like, "Oh, we can do this. Come on, let's go."
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And they were like, "We can do this," but our people, the Israelites, who we just talked about, "Oh, we will obey the Lord." They're like, "Oh no, they said we can't do it. We're going to get beat. We can't go in." Bad move.
And it said they melted in fear. Now, I don't know if you've ever been at a point in your life like that where that describes you. I know I have. There's been times in my life where something has come up where it feels like I melted in fear. But here, this entire nation of people melted in fear and stepped away. It's going to become something big here a little bit later. So God said, well, look, that's it. He's like, man, I am so tired of you Israelites. Everyone that saw my power in Egypt, everyone that saw my blessing in the wilderness, everybody that has come through on this journey has now decided to just cease right now. And so he says, fine. Drops his judge's gavel. I sentence you to 40 years in the wilderness until every single one of this generation who stepped foot out of Egypt under my power and decided to gripe about it is gone.
Yep.
Even you, Big Moses.
Yep.
And so that's what it is. So for the next,
And the sad part is, the people in Canaan were totally melting in fear over the Israelites because they had heard stories about what happened in Egypt.
That's right.
And they were terrified of the Israelite people. And yet the Israelites had no idea.
So they were scared to death.
Yeah.
And you know why they were scared? Because God had a plan. All right, this new Israelite nation wasn't seeing. So let's talk a little bit of logistics now. We're going to talk about 40 years in the desert. Now, if you grew up in church like I did, you know the story of the 40 years of wandering in the desert, right? It was Freddie and Billy and me and Joanne and Kaylee, and we were just wandering out in the woods. Well, no, that's not what it is, right? So here again, when we go into talking about ancient literature or ancient historical accounts and things like that, you are going to find different accounts and different numbers, right? So as you go back and you research this a little further, if you choose to look into it and you say, well, that's not what Billy said, and that's not what Tommy said, this number is completely different. Yeah, there are different numbers out there. There are different numbers out there from different language interpretations, from different numerical interpretations. Sometimes we just got to find a middle road and go with that, because what we're actually seeking is the bigger picture of the lesson and not necessarily the nuts and bolts about what it is. But so we've got to look back and we'll look at how many people actually came through the Red Sea. How many people came out of Egypt? How many people do we have wandering in the desert here? Well, as low estimate ends, we've seen go all the way down to about 30,000 people. And higher estimates have about 2.5 million. That's right, I said 2.5 million people that came out of Egypt, through the Red Sea, down through the wilderness, and all the way up here to the River Jordan to kind of stake out claim to Canaan and what that was going to be. Now, just imagine the logistical nightmare it is to move. You know what? I'll tell you what. So we got 30,000 on one end. We've got 2.5 million on the other end. I say we pick a nice little round number that we can work with, right? 802,618.
Okay.
That's our nice
800.
802,000.
Where'd you get that from?
618. So Moses left Egypt in 1446 through the Red Sea and went out with all of the Israelites that had lived there. How long had the Israelites lived there in Egypt? 400 years. That's right. For 400 years, these people had been living and growing. And so it just seems like it's in between 30,000 and 2.5 million.
Okay.
And maybe to help us understand, it also...
Yeah, help me understand.
It also happens to be the population of the 19 parishes that make up North Louisiana.
There we go. That's a lot of people, man.
So we're looking at a pretty good chunk of land. And if I dare say, we're looking at just about everybody that you know. Everybody you know and everybody that they know too. That's the amount of people we've got wandering around in the wilderness.
So when they got ready to move, they could just go out there and beat a drum or blow the ram's horn or something.
And just say, all right, so hey, we're going over here now. No. We're going over here now means that there has to be a hierarchy within these people. Because you got to imagine, not only are these people walking around out there, not only they're being fed in the wilderness, they're having babies.
Yeah.
They're dying and having to be buried.
Yeah.
They are meeting new people, right?
Well, and they have jobs.
They have jobs, yeah.
Keeping sheep or
you
whatever.
have soldiers. You have shepherds. You have people whose job it is to teach the others. You have the storytellers to make sure that these promises and these covenants from Abraham and these teachings from what they've learned coming out of the Red Sea goes on to the next generation and the next generation. So not all who wander are lost. So in this context, wandering people does not mean lost people.
Right.
And it's a real good thing to kind of continually remind yourself that these people knew that there was a plan. Remember, God has a plan. And so they're following it along. So these people are not lost. In this scenario, wandering means homeless. They don't have a home.
Yeah.
And in home, it means they do not have a nation.
Right.
It doesn't mean they're just walking through the Walmart parking lot because they don't know where else to go. It simply means that they move from town to town.
Right.
They may live here for months. They may live here for years. They may move from place to place. They're going to plant crops.
And they probably didn't move as much as you'd think with that many people.
With that many people and with as far as they've gone over this general population. All right. So, again, with moving logistically like this, that they have to come up, we have this ginormous, we literally have a nation of people. Now, one more thing on the side is, why this area? Well, in this time in history, this is a very unique time in history for this particular area. See, as we look back at the history of Israel has been presided over by all of the great empires throughout history. But this particular time that we're looking at during the Exodus, I'm sorry, this is my super nerd rant. So
no, that's good.
Just have to come along with me for a little bit. So at this time in history, this is a very lull and low point for all of the big major empires, right? The Egyptian Empire.
The Egyptian Empire kind of hit the wall.
It did. It is in its final decline. They're going down. That was part of the whole plagues and everything. And Pharaoh's like, get all these people, the 802,618, and your people and your carts and your donkeys and your grills, and get out of here. Right?
Yeah.
Babylon itself, Babylon is also in its declining period. Its heyday is gone, though we are going to run across them here a little bit later. Assyria, the big kingdom of Assyria, is just now starting to hit its middle of the road. It's really getting some traction under its feet. Greece is in its infancy. It is just starting to get ready in the Mycenaean region and everything like that. The Persians are on their way. They're building up over on the eastern side of Iran. They're beginning to come through Mesopotamia. And the Roman Empire, Rome is still 700 years from even being founded.
Okay.
So what that gives us is that gives us a relatively peaceful time in this particular area. And so that's good because now there are not roving bands of conquerors going out and hunting down our Jewish friends, right? And that also allows the people who actually inherit or that inhabit the area of Canaan to build up. They don't have to worry about conquering factions. They don't have to worry about anything. They're building their cities. They're getting ready to go. So this little peaceful time has really kind of set the stage and made it possible for our 802,618 people to really have a place where, even though they are wandering, that they can flourish. That's all I got about that.
You stay on that nerd thing, man.
So this
Well, I mean, they ran into a lot of different issues while they were out there in the wilderness. I mean, you know, there was a lot more to it, and really we don't have time to go through all that right now. So, but needless to say, for 40 years they moved around in this area until they got to the Promised Land, where Moses passed the torch to Joshua.
That's right. And so Moses had, actually, let me correct myself. God had selected Joshua to be the next leader of Israel. That was evident when he told Moses himself, do you want to read or do you want I to read?
No, you go ahead and read.
All right, I can read. All right, so Moses has led us out of Egypt. He has chosen Joshua as one of the 12 spies to go in. He has discipled and mentored Joshua as a leader and a confidant, and then Moses later on passes away in the wilderness, opening the door. So why Joshua? So the Amalekites came, and this is Exodus 17. We're going 8 through 15. So the Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. He's much better at these cities and old names than I am, by the way.
No.
And Moses said to Joshua, choose some of our men to go out and fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff and the God of my hands. And we saw this beautifully portrayed by Freddie and his helpers earlier. So Joshua fought the Amalekites that Moses had ordered, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning, but whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him as he sat on it, and Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one to each side and one to the other, so that his hands remained steady until sunset. And Joshua overcame the Amalekites with the sword. So this was the first time that we saw Joshua and his leadership ability on the battle. Then, verse 14, the Lord said to Moses, write this on a scroll to be remembered and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven. So he says, this is one of our first of our whole big things of trust and obey. He says, hey, write this down. Write this down and be sure that Joshua knows it.
That makes you think that Joshua didn't know what was going on.
Right.
There. Yeah.
So it says, Moses built an altar and called it, the Lord is my banner. For those of you play in the Cynthia Johnson home game, that is Jehovah Nissi. The Lord is my banner. And he said, because his hands were lifted up against the throne of God, the Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation. So Joshua shows his leadership prowess on the battlefield. And God reminds Moses, hey, write this down and let's make sure that Joshua knows this. He goes on from the book of Numbers. I'll give you a second to flip there. Numbers 27, 15 through 22. Do you got that one? You want to read that one?
I got that one, yeah. Moses said to the Lord, may the Lord, the God who gives breath to all living things, appoint someone over this community to go out and come in before them, one who will lead them out and bring them in, so the Lord's people will not be like sheep without a shepherd. So the Lord said to Moses, take Joshua, son of Nun, a man of whom is the spirit of leadership, and lay your hand on him. Have him stand before Eleazar the priest and the entire assembly, and commission him in their presence. Give him some of your authority so the whole Israelite community will obey him. He is to stand before Eleazar the priest who will obtain decisions for him by inquiring of the Urim before the Lord. At his command, he and the entire community of the Israelites will go out, and at his command they will come in. And then Moses did what he said there.
So Moses went ahead and he affirmed Joshua as the new leader of the Israelites. Now Moses still has about 20 years left in his life here, but he's going to go on and hit the administrative work in the back. Right, he's gonna run up and down the mountains. He's gonna commune with God and like that. But it's going to be from this point on. It's going to be Joshua leading the people. Now remember, who did we say chose Joshua for this position? God.
That's
God
right.
chose him. That's exactly right. Joshua is a leader. He proved that on the battlefield. He proved that within his own tribe. And now he's going to prove that to the entire nation of Israel. And one of the things that we said is, what happened when the nation of Israel did not have a leader? They went straight down. They spiraled down sometimes quickly, within 40 days, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes that happens in our own lives when we look at the parallels between Scripture to our own lives. If I'm not seeking leadership in my own life, or if I don't have a leadership to look for, my leadership by choice is the message of Christ, then things don't seem to go well.
That's right.
Don't have a leader. Also,
do you have Deuteronomy 31 on there?
Not on this one, I don't.
I'm going to read that one.
Go right ahead.
Because whenever Moses was about ready to die, he did have a charge for Joshua. And this is a recurring theme at the beginning of the book of Joshua. Yep. So it's good to hear. It's in Deuteronomy 31, verse 1. It says, Then Moses went out and spoke these words to all Israel. I am now 120 years old, and I am no longer able to lead you. The Lord has said to me, You shall not cross the Jordan. The Lord your God himself will cross over ahead of you. He will destroy those nations before you. He will take possession of your land. Okay, yeah. Joshua also will cross over ahead of you, as the Lord said. And the Lord will do to them what he did to Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, whom he destroyed along with their land. The Lord will deliver them to you, and you must do to them all that I have commanded you. Remember this one. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you.
Don't try to put a pin in that because you're going to hear that again.
Yeah.
So we know that Joshua is a leader. He has proven that he can do this. And now he has been given, we'll get there. Joshua is also a shepherd. And a shepherd is a different kind of leader. A shepherd is one who leads by protection. Right? And he has shown that not only will he stand on the battlefield, as well as in the councils and things like that for his own tribe, but he will stand for the entirety of the people of Israel. Joshua is a spiritual man, having communed with Moses, having spent time on Mount Sinai, having been the keeper of the tent.
Yeah, the keeper of the tent. This is something I just discovered reading up on this. It's in Exodus 33, verse 7. Now Moses used to take a tent and pitch it outside the camp some distance away, calling it the tent of meeting. Anyone inquiring of the Lord would go to the tent of meeting outside the camp. And whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people rose and stood at the entrances to their tents, watching Moses until he entered the tent. As Moses went into the tent, the pillar of cloud would come down and stay at the entrance, while the Lord spoke with Moses. Whenever the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance of the tent, they all stood and worshipped, each at the entrance to their tent. The Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. Then Moses returned to the camp. But listen to this part. But his young aide Joshua, son of Nun, did not leave the tent. So I don't know what that means about Joshua, but he was like standing on guard.
Yeah.
I mean, he made sure I'm going to be there when I'm needed.
That's right.
Anytime
Moses needed him, but it also can speak to the personal relationship that Joshua himself had with the Lord.
Right.
And gave him that shepherding video. Joshua is a spiritual man. We've definitely seen this in the way that he has been called up. He was chosen by God to fulfill all of these roles. This one's important in the Israeli society. Joshua is a commissioned man. He was actually prayed over and hands laid on him, and authority was given directly from Moses to Joshua. So people out there checking boxes and things like that, that's exactly what they were looking at. It's like, well, where does this man's authority come from? Well, he was commissioned directly by Moses. That's where his authority comes from, and therefore you should obey whatever he says. And that finishes out with his authority. Moses' authority came directly from God, And Joshua's authority came directly from Moses, i.e. making him an authority of God himself. So as we go on, we're going to start next week on the key book of, or the themes of Joshua. And so, you came in knowing that you were going to take a class about Joshua, and we have yet to hit Joshua 1:1. Well, I want to tell you something. Buckle up. So you guys at home this week, what I want you to think about, what I want you to mull over, what I want you to really dive into is let's take a look at those first 3 to 5 chapters of Joshua. You don't have to just go in there and read it, but spend a little time getting used to kind of the way that it's laid out, because that's what we're going to look at. There are several themes that are going to reoccur again and again. You're going to hear us speak of these week to week, and it's that God fulfills his promise. Since the very beginning, we've been talking about God has a plan. Right? God makes promises. These promises get fulfilled. Maybe not always on the timeline that we think they are.
Absolutely
Maybe not
not
in the ways that we think they are, but these promises, they get fulfilled. Secondly, disobedience leads to disaster. Man, we have seen this in the history of the Israelites time and time again.
Yep.
Especially when they say, we'll do it, we're going to obey, and then they don't. What do we have? What's third?
Third, true faith requires action. Joshua was a man of action. You'll see he's the first one to step out there into the well, I guess the priest maybe, but
sure.
he crossed over in front of the people in the Jordan River when they crossed into the promised land.
That's right. We must take possession, number 4, of what God has promised. If God has set you out on a path and then he has offered up something, it is not yours to reject. This is how you end up wandering in the Walmart parking lot for 40 years.
And we're really bad about that today.
That's right. That's right.
Not the Walmart part. Not taking possession. God is sovereign judge over all the nations. And so some of the stuff we're going to talk about clearing out that land of Canaan, that's God knew they were morally corrupt over there. And he wanted them out.
Right. Right. Go ahead and go again.
Oh, okay. Holiness fuels the miraculous. So when we live a holy life, good things are going to happen. Miraculous things are going to happen.
That's right. And then finally, leadership matters. Where you're hitching your cart matters, right? If you have the right leaders and if you have the right people in place to bring a large number forward, then it can be done. It can be done in incredible ways. Leadership matters not only to who you're looking up to, but leadership matters to who is looking up to you, right? You're a leader in somebody's life, right? You have influence over someone that's completely, regardless of your position or your station in life or where you think you are right now. Maybe it's a child. Maybe it's a person that you work with. Maybe it's someone in your family. Maybe it's somebody you haven't met yet. But that dominion and that leadership matters. And it matters how you're leading the people who are looking up for you. And this mattered incredibly in Joshua's life, as Joshua wanted to go right on ahead and fulfill not only the shoes that Moses had left him, to actually bring his people out of this 400, at this point now almost 500 years. God has a plan. God has a plan, and you have a part against a hard end so that our worship live stream can start. Then this class will start at 9 o'clock each Sunday morning. If you're running a little bit behind,
jump on your phone.
Whites Ferry Road.
Oh, come on, man.
Feel free to come on in. You're not going to bother us.
You're not going to bother us at all.
Hey, we loved having you today.
Yep.
Look forward to the next couple of weeks. Thank y'all very much.
Can we pray?
Oh, by all means, yeah.
Let's bow. Dear Lord, we just want to thank you for this time we have up here, just helping to dive into your word. I mean, we're not experts by any means, but we just hope that something touches somebody's heart or mind that makes them dig a little deeper. And thank you so much for leaders like Joshua, who showed us that we can be strong and courageous and follow you because you have a plan.